Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking the truly suffocating reality of daily life in North Korea. But, this isn't just a story about oppression. It's actually the story of a silent, grassroots revolution that is slowly but surely threatening one of the most secretive totalitarian regimes in the modern world. We're going to look really closely at the mechanisms of absolute control, the everyday struggle for survival, and the incredibly fascinating ways everyday citizens are actually fighting back.
To really wrap our heads around what we're dealing with here, listen to these chilling words from Shin Dong-hyuk. He's a man who was literally born inside a North Korean political prison camp known as Camp 14. His harrowing story, where survival meant eating rats and grass, really sets the stage for understanding the sheer brutality of this absolute dictatorship. It's a world that operates entirely on fear, isolation, and total control.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the illusion of democracy, move into absolute control over life, then the law of guilt, starvation, and forced labor, the silent market revolution, and finally, we'll look at the cracks in the dictatorship. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. The illusion of democracy, or the complete facade of the DPRK. There is a massive, stark contrast between what this country claims to be on paper and the actual reality. If you check out satellite imagery of the Korean peninsula at night, neighboring countries like China and South Korea are glittering. They are just lit up with modern city lights. But right in the middle, North Korea sits in almost pitch-black darkness. It is a literal and figurative black hole. Because of severe power shortages, people usually go to sleep at 7 in the evening. They are entirely accustomed to just living in the dark.
But crazy enough, it wasn't always this bleak. Back in 1980, North Korea's per capita GDP was actually ahead of both India and China. They had free healthcare, free housing, the whole shebang. But everything completely unraveled in the 1990s. The Soviet Union collapsed, which instantly cut off their supply of cheap oil and food. Then massive floods hit between 1995 and 1998. The government flat-out refused outside help that would have required compromising their nuclear program, which resulted in a devastating man-made catastrophe. It's estimated that anywhere from 500,000 to 2 million people died of starvation.
Moving on to Section 2. Absolute control over life. The microcontrol.
So how do you maintain power through a total economic collapse? Well, the Kim family relies on suffocating control over every micro detail of your daily life. We're not just talking about political power here, it's about controlling the physical self. Imagine walking into a hair salon and you are legally restricted to a specific menu of haircuts. Yep, there are exactly 15 approved hairstyles for men and 15 for women. And dictator Kim Jong-un's specific haircut, absolutely off limits. No one else in the entire country is allowed to have it.
This brilliantly illustrates the state's absolute terror of outside influence. Even your wardrobe is heavily policed. There is an actual, literal fashion police unit roaming the streets to prevent what the government calls a cultural invasion. Everyday items that we completely take for granted, strictly illegal. You cannot wear blue jeans, ripped jeans, or branded foreign clothing. You can't dye your hair, and women are strictly forbidden from wearing red lipstick. The state basically fears that if you start liking foreign fashion, you're going to stop being loyal to the regime. And if you want to connect to the outside world, well, it's virtually impossible. The global internet is heavily restricted. If a regular citizen wants to just use the domestic internet, they have to jump through some insane hoops. First, you have to apply for government permission. Second, you sit right next to an assigned librarian who literally monitors your screen. And third, the computer screen actually freezes, requiring the librarian to scan their fingerprint every 5 minutes just to unlock it so you can keep browsing. I mean, talk about an absolute chokehold on information.
Section 3. The law of guilt. The societal architecture of fear.
Beyond just what you wear or browse, the state controls the very fabric of society through a rigid caste system called songbun. This dictates literally everything about a person's existence: where you're allowed to live, the job you're assigned, your access to healthcare, and even how much food rations you receive. And the kicker? It's based entirely on your family's perceived political loyalty to the regime.
This system fractures society into 3 main classes. You have the core class. These are the absolute loyalists who get to live in the capital city of Pyongyang, which is basically window-dressed for the rest of the world. Then there's the wavering middle class, who are just constantly under suspicion. Finally, the hostile class. These folks are viewed as enemies of the state, banished at least 50 kilometers away from the capital, and are literally forced by the secret police to spy on one another. But the real terror keeping this whole caste system intact is the law of guilt by association.
If one person commits a political crime, say trying to escape the country, or even accidentally soiling a newspaper that has the supreme leader's picture on it, up to 3 generations of their family are severely punished. That means a grandfather's mistake can literally send his unborn grandchildren to a prison camp. And this is exactly why Shin Dong-hyuk, who we mentioned earlier, was born in a prison camp in the first place. His uncle had fled to South Korea.
Section 4. Starvation and forced labor. The economics of survival. All of this constant fear is compounded by the sheer desperate daily struggle to just survive. Because the state dictates occupations, men are forced into government-assigned jobs. But here is the truly shocking part. They receive stagnant wages that were set before the 1990s economic crash. So today, a standard monthly salary can shockingly only buy about 7 to 9 kilograms of corn. It is nowhere near enough to feed a family. To put that into perspective, a doctor's entire monthly salary wouldn't even buy a single kilogram of rice.
And for those who resist or just fall down the Sungbun caste system, they face the horrific political prison camps. There are an estimated 80,000 to 120,000 people currently in prison right now. They endure 16 to 18 hours of forced labor daily, usually in mines and on farms. The starvation diets are so severe that prisoners actually resort to eating grass, rats, and snakes. Tragically, about 40% of prisoners die of hunger. It is quite literally modern-day slavery sustaining the regime's economy.
Which brings us to Section 5, the silent market revolution, the Jeongmadang.
Out of this profound economic failure, an accidental grassroots resistance was born. Because married women aren't legally forced into those low-paying government jobs like the men are, they really had to take survival into their own hands. So they began running local black markets called Jeongmadang, and it's a total game changer. These female-led markets grew so large that they now generate over 70% of a typical household's income. When the government couldn't feed its people, the women of North Korea stepped up and created a vital, unsanctioned capitalist economy right under the dictator's nose.
Finally, Section 6, cracks in the dictatorship, the awakening.
You see, these markets didn't just bring in food. They brought in something far, far more dangerous to the regime: information. Through the Jeongmadang, citizens secretly buy and share foreign media. They started with DVDs, but when the government started abruptly cutting power to trap the discs inside the players, the people just adapted. They shifted to using Chinese media players called no-tools and easily hidden little USB sticks loaded with illegal South Korean dramas. When citizens watch these shows, they see the wealth, the freedom, and the reality of the outside world. It completely shatters the state's propaganda that North Korea is some sort of paradise. And actually, sharing these illegal USBs with friends is building a secret network of trust, breaking down that government mandate that everyone has to spy on each other.
There's a great quote that points out, if you take away people's religion, they will follow you religiously. The state has entirely relied on presenting the Kim dynasty as literal gods, heavily punishing any actual religious practice. They mandate portraits in every single home and craft these absurd myths about their leaders' supernatural abilities. The government essentially forced the people to follow them religiously by taking away all other truths. Now, however, the influx of outside media, facilitated by this market revolution, is slowly eroding that forced worship. The illusion is breaking.
As we wrap up this explainer, we can really see the deep cracks forming in this totalitarian facade. Through USB sticks, black markets, and quiet acts of everyday defiance, the people of North Korea are slowly waking up. The grip of fear is loosening, especially as corruption allows people to just bribe their way out of strict rules. So, looking at their incredible resilience, it leaves us to wonder, if literally every aspect of their life, from your clothes to your thoughts, was dictated by the state, what would you be willing to risk to reclaim your fundamental freedom? Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep learning.